Hey everyone, it is Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. It is just Brian Rundle tonight, just me. So I hope that's okay with you. I know most people, when they tune in, it's probably for Lana. They want to see Lana because Lana's really good and she makes me look way better than I really am. But I'm going to give it a go here tonight, as I always do. Usually during the week, we have our live show on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock, and that's where you can find us both together. But I usually kind of venture out on my own during the week and catch up on some things that has happened over the last few days that we should be and will be talking about. So I thank everybody for joining. Of course, it is very cold now. A lot of people out there are like, Brian, you always talk about you're a big sports fan. There's a big playoff game tonight. You're not watching the playoff game. And two things. One, I do have it on in front of me. I have it on my iPad. But listen, I'm a diehard Miami Dolphins fan. And if you don't know what that's like, it's very tough. I really can't stand watching the NFL playoffs when the Dolphins aren't in it, which typically they aren't. They were in it the last few years. They had a slight chance to make it this year. They didn't make it. Anyway, that means nothing. I am here to tell you, though, I do have the game on in front of me. But I will not be distracted because we got important things to talk about. The first thing is let's talk about what just happened the other day. We officially have a convicted felon as our president. Donald J. Trump was sentenced the other day for his crimes in New York, where he was found guilty on 34 counts. And basically what he was doing was he was trying to cover up his payments to Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet, to keep that away from the public so would not interfere in the upcoming election against Hillary Clinton. So he was found guilty on all 34 counts. Now, of course, most of us who love to see justice, regardless of who it is, would have liked to have seen some sort of jail time. We would have liked seen some sort of punishment. But I think all of us knew that going in, that was not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen because the judge pretty much said it wasn't going to happen. So let's go real quick. And by the way, if you are joining me on TikTok, you can also come on over to YouTube and subscribe and join with me there too as well. I would appreciate that if you did it. If not, just stay on TikTok and watch, and please hit that double tap the screen. And I'm learning all the TikTok stuff, so just bear with me. But let's get to the news here. Trump avoids prison time, fines for New York felony conviction. President-elect Trump, I mean, I know the news has to report that, but as we know on this show, the president-elect was Elon Musk. But anyway, President-elect Trump received no penalty sentence in his New York hush money case Friday after the Supreme Court refused to intervene. Trump is the first former and returning president convicted of a felony. The expected sentence of unconditional discharge and recommended by prosecutors means the conviction remains on his legal record. The sentencing, which Trump fought to delay or block altogether, comes just 10 days before his inauguration and White House return. The nation's high court on Thursday dashed a last-ditch bid by Trump's legal team to stop the proceeding. Judge Juan Merchan had already indicated that Trump wouldn't face jail time and after winning the 2024 election. Now, of course, the four dissenting judges, as we all knew was going to be, was Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch. I will say one thing for Amy Coney Barrett. She seems to be taking the job seriously. Now, obviously, there are things that Amy Coney Barrett has done and probably will do in the future that will anger us. But at the same time, she does seem to be taking the job seriously, and she is going to rule in fairness and not everything Donald Trump, like those four other do boys who get on their knees and bow down to Donald Trump. much like a lot of the other MAGA men do. It's funny to me when we call these guys men on the MAGA side, because I've never seen men so in love with other men in my entire life. It is a very bizarre thing. Like, I grew up, like I said, I was a huge sports fan, and I grew up, Dan Marino, Larry Bird were two of my biggest heroes growing up as a kid. I'm a child. And as a kid growing up, these were my heroes. I didn't love these two nowhere near as grown men love this guy, Donald Trump, who's a grifter, a lifelong con man, a clown, and he's like literally the dumbest person I've ever heard speak in politics. And that's saying a lot based on what we've seen over the last, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years. When you're throwing in a Matt Gaetz and a Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, the bar is very low, but Donald Trump still somehow finds a way to shimmy under it. But of course, Donald Trump and his ridiculous, I don't even like doing this, but this was him on his Truth Social. Of course, he had to say something about the particular case, that the radical Democrats have lost another pathetic, un-American witch hunt. Now, keep in mind, all of this language is important for their side, because radical, Democrats, un-American, witch hunt, all these things resonate with a certain group of people. And it's enough people to make sure that this guy runs the country again and never serves any time for all the crimes he's committed. This is a calculated, very organized thing. That this isn't Donald Trump coming. Donald Trump is going to say this kind of crap anyway. He has his entire life. But the organization of the far right propaganda media has put all this together to sucker so many people in this country. But we'll get into stuff like that a little bit later. Let's finish with this moron has to say. On American Witch Hunt. After spending I'm not doing a Donald Trump impression, by the way. I know a lot of people try to do it. I tried before, it didn't work out well. After spending tens of millions of dollars, wasting over 6 years of obsessive work that should have been spent on protecting New Yorkers from violent, rampant crime that is destroying the city and the state. Crime is down in New York, by the way. Coordinating with the Biden-Harris Department of Injustice in lawless weaponization and bringing complete, baseless, illegal, and fake charges against your 45th and 47th president, me. I was given an unconditional discharge. That result alone proves that, as all legal scholars and experts have said, that is absolutely not true. There is no case. There was never a case. And this whole scam fully deserves to be dismissed. Too late for that. The real jury, the American people, have spoken by re-electing me with an overwhelming mandate. That is not true. We went over that last show, in one of the most consequential elections in history. That I will agree with, and it went the wrong way. As the American people have seen, this case has no crime, no damage, no proof, no facts, no law, only highly conflicted judge, a star witness who is a disbarred, disgraced serial perjurer and criminal election interference. I noticed he left out Stormy Daniels as a star witness in that case. Today's event was a despicable charade. Almost done, I promise. And now that it is over, we will appeal this hoax, which has no merit, and restore the trust of Americans in our great system of justice, make America great again. So the most disappointing thing about these messages and these tweets is that for 4 years when Biden was president, we were reading this nonsense. And I think a lot of us were convinced, I know I was, I'll speak for me, that that this nonsense was going to be over with. We would not have to deal with this anymore. But unfortunately, not only are we going to have to deal with it again, but we have a minimum of 4 years, unless something happens. 4 years of this ridiculousness. And see, the problem, again, it harkens back to the fact that Donald Trump can post this all day long and people read it. And you have a large number of people who read this, like you, me, and anybody else watching this program who sides with um, the right side, I should say, at least against Donald Trump. Anything is the right side in my estimation. But if you're reading that, you understand how insanely ridiculous it is. But we have seen how well this works on people who are susceptible to this and who are easily duped and manipulated, or they think and they know that he is full of it. However, it just it resonates with them. The fact that Donald Trump trolls the libtards is way more important to them than making sure that egg prices actually do go down, that interest rates and gas prices actually do go down, even though the president doesn't really control interest rates and gas prices, but Donald Trump has them thinking that it does. So when they don't go down, the good news for Donald Trump and the whole MAGA side is that it doesn't matter that none of that stuff goes down, because he's going to conduct his little tweets. And then he's also going to have President Musk with his $44 billion purchase of Twitter. He's going to have the Joe Rogans of the world, the far right-wing propaganda ecosystem that is dominated and is taken over the mainstream media. That's something everybody, keeps talking about, is how the liberals dominate mainstream media. What are you, out of your fucking mind? The media is now dominated by right-wing propaganda. And the mainstream media, they're not 100% on board with the right-wing propaganda media, but they're not helping. They're not helping at all. In fact, you want to know how I know that? Look at the ratings of CNN and MSNBC. They have declined significantly. Significantly, they have declined. And that is because you have a lot of people on the left who were counting on them to tell the truth and to call out Donald Trump and all these lies about everything that's being said on the right. They didn't do it. They might have tried here and there, but they didn't do it properly. They still wanted to both sides things. And when you both sides things, you have one side of media that is 100% on Donald Trump's side. And then you got another side of media that isn't necessarily against Donald Trump. He's not necessarily for him either, but you have 50% of it trying to be fair to him. And when you have that 50% of trying to be fair to him, and then you add in the right-wing propaganda ecosystem and propaganda media, then it's impossible. It's almost impossible to win. But take solace in this. There's one thing everybody should take solace in. And the one thing you should take solace in is that he barely won, despite the fact that he said mandate. He barely won. Look at all the states. Everybody's like, he won all the swing states. Yes, he won all the swing states. That's true. If you look at a team schedule and they played 10 games and they won 7 out of the 10 games, but 7 of those games were just by 2 or 3 points or 1 point, that means they barely won every game. Yeah, they won the 7 games, but it didn't mean they blew out all the teams. Same thing. You look at all the states that were swing states. He barely won all of them, and it was the 3rd lowest popular vote total in the history of this country. So this idea that it was a mandate and a blowout is absurdly ridiculous. That is absolutely not true. But what I was saying was, what we can take solace in is that a woman who you still had a lot of people who didn't know who she was, barely lost with 100 days to run. So if you think all is lost, I wouldn't necessarily blame you, but I would also say that, take solace in this. And then you also got to take solace in the fact that no matter what, the right-wing MAGAs are going to believe everything that propaganda media says. Do you really think that if egg prices don't go down, milk, gas, interest rates, which they're not going to, by the way, when the tariffs actually start raising prices, do you think that, or not think, do you not think that they have already written the script for those easily manipulated people to tell them exactly why it didn't happen and how they can still blame it on Joe Biden? That script's already been written, and that script is going to be put into play as soon as all this comes to fruition. And they're going to go around and regurgitate all of it. However, you're still going to have the people who didn't necessarily love Donald Trump. They just didn't know Kamala Harris was, or if they knew she was, it was based on ridiculous disinformation. So they're like, I guess it's better to vote for this guy over the woman who only cares about making sure that transgender people get surgeries in prison. That makes more sense to me. So those people are going to start to realize, wow, I made a big mistake. And some of those people already have realized that they made a big mistake. I've seen it. I've seen people say, I think I made a mistake. This might not be good. So we'll see how that plays out. One other last thing before I move on to the next segment. I want to point out, and I pointed this out too in a podcast a few weeks ago. It was not too far after the election. And I saw this again, and it's just, it's clear to me. First of all, yes, I understand I'm a white person. However, I'm talking about, there is a statistic that if you took out uneducated white people's vote, Kamala Harris wins in an absolute landslide. You could throw in the evangelicals too. And what's the difference, or what's the similarities really between the evangelicals and the MAGA people and the uneducated white people? They're all very easily manipulated. They're easily angered. You can anger them over things that are not happening, like immigrants are not invading this country and committing crimes left and right. Boys are not dominating girls' sports. That's not happening. The inflation rate right now is the same inflation rate, or right around the same inflation rate that it was before Joe Biden took office. The economy is fantastic, but those people think the economy is terrible. I'm not saying that egg prices and milk prices aren't a little bit higher in some places across the country, some places. And I'll tell you one place, my state, Florida, highest inflation rate in the country right now. So if we're looking by state, you guys, if you live in the state of Florida, you might want to talk to your governor about what's going on in the state of Florida, because right now we have the highest inflation rate. Also too, the poorest countries, or the poorest states in the country, are mostly red states. If you look at the poorest states in the country, if you see the bottom 10, 9 out of the bottom 10 are red states. If you want to see the richest ones, I think it's 8 out of the top 10 are the richest states in the country. They're blue states. So I don't know. You keep talking about how the blue governors and the blue people, the blue states, how their states are run are so terrible. Meanwhile, this is coming from a fucking moron in West Virginia or Mississippi or Missouri, whose states are disasters. But anyway, before I get to the next segment, I see we have a couple of comments. I see a comment from CM Rap. Happy Saturday, Brian. Happy Saturday to you, CM. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. And if you have not subscribed yet, I hope you do, please. Judy. Is this the same Judy? Yep, it sure is. Okay. So Judy had commented on one of my tweets. And Judy, I can tell you already, is an idiot. And so we're going to read her her comment here. Good, caught you live. Thanks, Judy. Insults, yet you can't comprehend facts with a kissy thing. Uneducated voters, bless your heart. Okay, well, I told her earlier. Judy, listen, this is a little different because we're on a live show, and you're telling me I can't comprehend facts. If you're still here, what facts am I not comprehending? I don't know how long you've been part of the show or how long you've been listening. You can tell me what facts I haven't comprehended, and then I will straighten you out. CM Rap, AK. Oh, it's Angel. Angel, how are you? Thank you, Angel. Angel's always here. Angel is one of my favorites. I love Angel. Angel's been with me for a very long time, back from my old podcast. So I appreciate Angel. So thank you so much. If you are watching me on TikTok, please hit that little tap the screen thing if you don't mind. You might hate me because of what I'm saying. So if you do, just tap it like 5 times. But if you like me, tap it a little bit more. But anyway, next subject. And here's I'll tell you what. This angers me. And not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as anything political. This angers me as a human being. The way the guy that this country foolishly elected as president of the United States for a second time is flat out lying about what is happening with the fires in Los Angeles. He did this with the hurricane in North Carolina. He did it with the hurricane did he do it with the hurricane? Wasn't there another one before that? Forget it. Let's just stick with the North Carolina hurricane. This is not funny. It's not cool. It is nothing but dangerous and awful, terrible to do to your fellow Americans and just fellow human beings overall. If this does not anger you, if this doesn't give you some sort of pause and go, hey man, I voted for you, but enough's enough with that bullshit, because people are dying. People are getting burned out of their houses. Their houses are burning down. Maybe pets are trapped in there, which I can't even think about that because that'll drive me fucking insane. But they have done nothing but turn this into the most awful political thing that, again, this just really drives me nuts. Here is Anderson Cooper. He is over in LA, and he got a quick word in with the governor there of California, Gavin Newsom. And of course, because we have this absolute monster doing the shit that he's doing, he's got to sit here and fucking interview Gavin Newsom about his disinformation.
President-elect chose to attack you, blame you for this.
One can't even respond to it. I mean, people are literally fleeing. People have lost their lives. Kids lost their schools. Families completely torn asunder. Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say. I won't. I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden. And he had the backs of every single person in this community. He didn't play politics, didn't try to divide any of us.
Finally, your message.
Yeah, I mean, this is a sad situation, and you're really not even just turning it political. You're not even saying something like, I feel terrible for the people in Los Angeles. This is a horrible tragedy. I really hope everybody gets everything together and tries to find out. And then maybe if you want to criticize, which from my estimation, there's really no real criticism against Gavin Newsom in this. But anyway, if you wanted, there always is room for criticism, but to flat blame and lie about the criticisms that you are placing on not just Gavin Newsom, but California, you see these people like Jesse Waters who are showing pictures of the fire chief there, and he's inferring that it's a DEI hire because she's black. You have people in there who are black or gay or anything like that. To me, that's disgusting. I mean, that is just abhorrent, and it's just behavior that I don't know. This is not stuff that I ever grew up with. I did not grow up listening to this kind of nonsense and garbage, but this nonsense and garbage started 8 years ago when even Fox News back in the day, Fox News didn't even do anything as this terrible. Now, Fox News has always been biased and they've always been nutty, but they've never been this awful. They have just been flat awful. But here is CNN, somebody on CNN, and he goes over a full fact check over what Donald Trump had to say. But first, we're going to hear Donald Trump's words, and then you're going to hear all the fact checking on the particular things that he had to say, not just in this press conference, but beyond.
Gavin Newsom had an opportunity to have millions of gallons a week, a day, millions and millions of gallons come down from the north. And I was able to get him federal approval from that, from the Department of Commerce of all departments. I didn't realize it would go through Commerce. I would have thought environmental, but it goes through Commerce. I got all of the approvals, and he said, I don't want to sign it. I don't want the water.
CNN's Daniel Dale is joining us for a fact check of some of this. So, Daniel, can you tell us about what Trump said there? Is it true?
I showed a social media post from the president-elect yesterday to an expert in California water policy, a man named Jeffrey Mount. He said, Abby, none of it is true. So this has just been a staggering quantity of wrongness from the president-elect in a very short period of time. And there have been some small specific examples. Like he keeps saying that Governor Newsom refused to sign a so-called water restoration declaration. In fact, no such declaration even exists, as Newsom's office has pointed out. He also said yesterday that they're not using firefighting planes. We've seen those planes. They're there. But more than that, Abby, I think the president-elect has promoted an overarching false narrative. You heard a bit of it there, that the challenges we're seeing in the firefighting effort have something to do with a long-running policy battle about how much water should be kept in the north of the state to protect fish species like the Delta smelts and other environmental ecosystems, and how much should be sent to the south to help agricultural interests, farmers in an area called the Central Valley. Now, 2 water policy experts in California told me emphatically yesterday, none of this has anything to do with each other. There is simply no connection between the protection of that smelt fish in that estuary in the Delta in the north and what we're seeing in the south for a number of reasons. But number one, there is no shortage of water in the Los Angeles area. The reservoirs are at or above historical levels. The water is there. Now, we have seen high-profile issues in one part of the city, Pacific Palisades, where some hydrants were dry or did not have a lot of water. But that was not because there was not enough water in the region. That was because of technical, logistical, infrastructure issues related to the hilly, mountainous terrain and the location where water tanks have been situated. So the idea that not enough water has been sent down from the north and instead has been, protecting a little fish there, and that's why we're seeing these fires be hard to contain, simply does not bear out at all.
That's really important information there, Daniel. One other thing, Trump is talking about President Biden not leaving him any money with FEMA to deal with these wildfires. What are the facts around that?
It's just not true. We heard this from Trump after Hurricane Helene in the fall. It wasn't true then, and it's not true now. Now, it is true that FEMA's disaster relief fund was severely depleted by the number of disasters last year, but critically, Abby, it was replenished by the disaster relief supplemental bill that President Biden signed in December. I spoke to FEMA yesterday. They told me that there is approximately $27 billion today in that disaster relief fund, plus billions of dollars of additional disaster-related funding they have in other pockets of money. Now, it is true that that $27 billion might well not be enough to cover the needs produced by every disaster we unfortunately end up seeing over the rest of 2025, but $27 billion is simply not no money, which is what Trump said yesterday.
Yeah. All right, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's absurd. He did this again with North Carolina, and I heard people who said, can you believe that Joe Biden is just ignoring the people of North Carolina and they have no money? FEMA had plenty of money at the time. FEMA, in fact, Joe Biden had set up emergency funding prior to the hurricane even hitting. But it went on as far as the people saying that Joe Biden was sitting in his office and he just wasn't doing anything. He didn't care about North Carolina. He was taking all the money and he was just sending it to Ukraine. First of all, most of the people on the MAGA side have no idea how this works, and they don't understand this. They don't understand that the aid to Ukraine isn't dollars necessarily. He didn't take money, write a check, and send them money. It was different, what's the word? Damn it. He was looking for military, for military equipment that was being sent over there that had a value on it. And once that value was placed, that's the amount of aid that was sent based on the value of the military equipment that was being sent over there, military equipment that we haven't used, that we probably will never use, that was being sent over to Ukraine to help fight a war against one of our biggest enemies, Vladimir Putin and Russia. Anybody else that has a problem with this is being suckered by the right-wing propaganda media. How does anybody in this country, I want somebody to tell me, growing, if you're over the age of, I don't even say, let's say 40 or 45, tell me one time in your life you remember anybody siding with Russia as your pal and your buddy, as somebody that is not somebody that the United States always needs to keep an eye out for. But now all of a sudden we have these people like Tucker Carlson going around and spreading to people that Putin's really the good guy and Ukraine's the bad guy here. What are you, insane? This is crazy. I have no idea what or how this happened to this country, but this is just absolutely crazy insane. Angel says, remember the North Carolina fire? They should have gone out and raked the pine needles, and then there would never have been a fire. You know, that's funny is that I think I heard one of those so-called pundits bring that up, saying that Trump said that they should have raked the needles, but this is in a residential area. It has nothing to do with a forest fire. This is not a forest fire. And it turns out it looks like this is arson, that somebody had started this fire, and whoever did it, and I think they have already caught one person, but whoever did it, I hope something terrible and awful happens to them. Yeah, build a pipeline for the water from Shasta to LA. Again, just ridiculousness that it's not feasible. It's not realistic. All this stuff that, but that they've been saying for a long time, it's just been outrageously ridiculous. But anyway, next topic. We just had a funeral for a former president, Jimmy Carter. And again, if you are somebody on the MAGA side, first of all, I'm assuming you're new to politics. You're not very, you haven't followed politics. And be honest, you haven't followed politics your whole life. You followed politics when your favorite WWE wrestler became a candidate. And when I say WWE wrestler, in that sort of ilk, somebody that resembles a WWE wrestler. And that's when you started getting involved in politics. You're like, oh my goodness, this is exciting. This is a guy who yells at people and calls people nicknames. And this is easy for me to understand, because I didn't understand all the other stuff prior to, but now I understand nicknames. Nicknames are fun. So now I'm going to get involved in politics, and I'm voting for this guy no matter what he says, no matter what he does. And not only am I going to vote for him, I'm going to defend every single thing he does like he's my own child. But anyway, if you're new to politics, you are probably going to have horrible and terrible things to say about a former president, Jimmy Carter. Now, even when Richard Nixon died, you know, I didn't have terrible things to say about him. Richard Nixon actually had some good programs that was added to his administration that probably would have been some Democratic policies that would have been passed. In fact, one of the things that he passed, and of course there wasn't cell phones back then, but, and if there was, I mean, it was just very high tech and only very few people had them. But one of the things that he had is that people, if you have access to a phone, no matter what, is going to get free access to 911 and emergency services. And that has also now been passed along onto cell phones. So even if you have a cell phone and you don't have cell phone service, you do have access to emergency services. So, but there are some other things that he passed. I have terrible things to say about Richard Nixon. He was a president of the United States. But there are people that I've already heard say just terrible and awful things about Jimmy Carter. Let me tell you one thing about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter is one of the best American presidents post his presidency. He's not going to go down as the greatest. I'll acknowledge that. I think he was underrated. I don't think he was as bad as people said he was, but he's not going to go down as one of our greatest presidents of all time. But I will tell you again, after his presidency, he is just revered as one of the best men who has served this office, especially post presidency. I mean, this guy is 97, 98 years old, and he's still building houses for Habitat for Humanity. He's still out there hammering nails. He was still out there doing good. He was out there being a diplomat for other countries and talking to other countries post his presidency. So to say bad, terrible things about Jimmy Carter, you're a bad, terrible American. You're not a good American if you do that. The funeral just happened recently, and I'm sure all of you have seen this. Donald Trump and Melania, his wife, I guess his wife, I really don't know at this point because she barely is seen with him. You can tell that she has disdain for him. But I think there's obviously some sort of contractual agreement between them to where she shows up to some things and some things she does not show up to. But he walks in and goes by Mike Pence, who, bigger man than I am, shook his hand. I mean, I say bigger man than I am because this man literally tried to have his vice president hanged, or he did nothing to stop it when they were out there chanting it, when they caused the riot and insurrection attempt on January 6th. But the one person who did have balls was Mike Pence's wife, who decided, I'm not sure that I'm going to greet you the same way my husband did.
To you, we can see President-elect Trump now entering the room for this morning's service.
Al Gore, Mike Pence there with former President Trump. I'm not sure former Vice President Pence and Donald Trump have seen each other.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, you can see the snub by Karen Pence, a.k.a. Mother, is, I believe, what Mike calls Karen. But you see the snub there. Mike Pence obviously letting bygones be bygones, I guess. But, also, too, I will say this, and I said this, too, when I heard and saw people on the with the clip where Obama and Trump were talking and laughing together. The one thing is you're in an uncomfortable position, right? You're sitting next to the guy that everybody there obviously wants nothing to do with. And you're the only one there sitting next to him. And you could be a dickhead. And in some circles, people would say do the right thing and just ignore him and snub him the same way Karen Pence did. Or you can realize you're on a funeral and maybe that's not the place to have beef necessarily with the person that's sitting next to you and somebody that you've had talked with before in the past. So, if you're mad at Obama for laughing, I don't blame you. I don't say you shouldn't be. But, at the same time, I think you're in a very uncomfortable position if you notice somebody that was not there. His wife, Michelle, was not there. And the only guess that most people have come up with, the same guess I came up with, is that she knew the seating arrangement. She knew exactly where they were going to be seated. And she definitely wanted nothing to do with Donald Trump. And she would not have greeted him, I don't think, the same way the Mike Pences and Al Gores, as you saw, and Donald Trump. Also, too, I don't have the clip, but George W. Bush walked right past Donald Trump, just said, no, I'm not greeting you at all. Although I will say it was a little disappointing where George W. Bush, he obviously doesn't like Donald Trump. He can't stand him and he is not happy with his presidency. But he is the one guy that could have come out prior to the election and said, I endorse Kamala Harris and I do not endorse Donald Trump, but he decided to stay out of it. And that was disappointing for a lot of people. Democrats, Republicans who are against Donald Trump are very disappointed with that. And, so I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, right now, we are where we are. And Donald Trump, Elon Musk won the presidency. He bought it. And they're going to let Donald Trump think he's the president for a little while, which is cool. But if you saw our last show, we did talk about the dynamic between Elon and Donald Trump and who's going to ultimately win that battle, because there is going to be a battle. But speaking of presidents, let's talk about the one we have right now, Joe Biden, where obviously we're going to have to say goodbye to him in 10 days from now. But he spoke at President Carter's funeral, and he was, obviously speaking about the president, Jimmy Carter, but it also seemed as if he had some pointed comments towards somebody else in the crowd. Let's see if you can guess who it was.
We have an obligation to give hate no safe harbor and to stand up to what my dad used to say is the greatest sin of all, the abuse of power. That's not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. We're all fallible. But it's about asking ourselves, are we striving to do things, the right things? What values? What are the values that animate our spirit? Do we operate from fear or hope, ego or generosity? Do we show grace? Do we keep the faith when it's most tested?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he had some words for Donald Trump, and you could see the look on Donald Trump's face as President Biden is speaking his words. And, good, because Donald Trump should feel uncomfortable in that environment, because he'll sit there and he'll laugh it up with Obama. He'll sit there and shake hands with Pence, and he'll shake hands with everybody and laugh it up and be cordial to everybody to their face. But when he's not in front of them, what does he do? He talks shit about them like the pussy that he is. Instead of being, somebody, the big tough guy everybody thinks that he is, then why is he not a tough guy when he's in front of them? When he sits down in front of them, he's on his best behavior, like a good little doggy, right in front of Obama. He'll laugh it up with Obama and be on his best behavior. He won't talk that shit to his face. And I'm not saying this is something like where Obama will punch him or knock him out or anything like that. But I'm just talking about, everybody keeps talking about he's the big, bad, tough man. He's not a big, bad, tough man at all. He did this to Vladimir Putin. When he stood right next to him on the American stage, when a reporter asked, do you believe that Vladimir Putin and Russia had anything to do with interfering in the 2016 election, which they clearly did, which has been proven that they did? He's asking him in front of Vladimir Putin. And what did he do? He bowed down like a little doggy that he is in front of Vladimir Putin and said, I don't see why he told me he didn't do anything, so I have to believe him. So that's the big, bad, tough guy that you guys keep thinking that he is. I assure you, there's nothing tough about Donald Trump. Nothing. He's a tough guy. What's the word everybody likes to use? Keyboard warriors that, when they're on Twitter and they're talking all that shit and they're doing all that stuff, they're keyboard warriors that, they'll say it on behind a keyboard, but they won't say it to somebody's face. That's Donald Trump. He's a keyboard warrior. He will never say anything like that to people in front of their faces. But anyway, next topic. This is why Donald Trump can win elections. And this is one of the reasons. One of the reasons, we've discussed this many times. One of the reasons is you've got somebody like President Musk who is clearly on his side and wanted him to win. So what did he do? He spent $44 billion to buy a website so he could basically turn it into the cesspool that he wants it, a far right-wing ecosystem that will get the message out to more people than anything on the left. And there is clear suppression of anybody that talked positively about Democrats or people on the left. Those accounts were being suppressed. They were being suspended. They were being blocked. They were being shadow banned. There was all kinds of things happening with those on the left. Everything on the right was being amplified, and everything Elon Musk said was being doubly amplified. He wanted to make sure everybody that had a Twitter account that did not block him was able to see what he had to say. And he was spreading more disinformation than anybody on his little platform. And you would say, man, $44 billion sounds like a lot for a site that after he bought it wound up losing, what was it, over almost 70% of its value. I mean, Twitter now is worth maybe 10 billion, 13 billion, something in that range. He bought it for $44 billion. He tried to buy it for less. He tried to sue and buy it for less, and he did win that lawsuit. So he had to buy it for the 44 billion. But it is these tech bros who all of a sudden now are all on Donald Trump's side. And they are not only spending the money to make sure that he wins, because Elon Musk also spent another $270 million in campaign financing for Donald Trump to help him win this election. But you have these tech bros, and then you also have these podcasters now. The number 2 podcaster on Spotify now. He has been dropped, thankfully, and I hope he continues to drop, because this is somebody I cannot fucking stand, and this is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan had Mark Zuckerberg on the other day, and I can just tell. I feel like I can read human beings pretty well. Mark Zuckerberg is just saying the things that he knows that Joe Rogan wants to hear. Listen to this clown and listen to these two just talk to each other like this is some breaking story and news that everybody should know now. And just listen.
That I was just referring to. I mean, a lot of this is documented. I mean, because Jim Jordan and the House had this whole investigation and committee into the kind of government censorship around stuff like this. And we produced all these documents, and it's all in the public domain. I mean, basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse. And it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Oh, did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we, but I think,
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails, the emails are published. It's all kind of out there. And,
I wonder how interested Joe Rogan is about the phone call Donald Trump made to the Georgia election officials to try to find him 11,000 votes. You fucking idiot.
And they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating and coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow.
First of all, there was a lot of stuff that was going on in Facebook in 2020, and they were trying to blame Joe Biden. There was a problem, though, that Joe Biden wasn't president in 2020. Donald Trump was president in 2020. But anyway, I never seen more grown men just bowing down to these people. And I guess, I'm not certainly in position to own something like Facebook. So obviously Mark Zuckerberg is looking out for his company and just making sure that he's on the good side of somebody who is deranged and lunatic and could potentially hurt his website. So maybe he is looking out, but at the same time, I mean, there's also part of you that's an American, and maybe stand up a little bit against anything that anything like that, just so you can hold on to your company, hold on to your money. To me, again, that's a little disappointing, but money is ruling everything right now. And this is what's going to happen to this country. We've already had the people who make the most amount of money. They are already dominating the atmosphere, the political atmosphere. They were spending money on politicians. Citizens United is probably the worst decision that the Supreme Court has ever made, which allows basically lots and lots of money into politics, where it used to be restricted on how much money that people could give to as donations and stuff like that. But now you can, again, as you just heard, Elon Musk spent over $240 million in this last election, which is absurd. You shouldn't be able to buy elections. You shouldn't be able to buy politicians. And the fact that we now allow this, and that it's gotten to a point where the richest person in the entire world is now controlling what is happening. He is sitting in on, he is not an elected official. He has not been elected to anything. And he's sitting in on meetings with world leaders, the richest man in the world. How does that not bother you or scare you or concern you? That I'll never understand. But a couple more Joe Rogan clips. I don't know how old everybody is when you who's watching this, but if you're at least my age, maybe 45 or older, you knew how big Mel Gibson was in the day. Mel Gibson was gigantic. He was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. I mean, the Lethal Weapon series alone made him just a major, major star, and everybody loved Mel Gibson. This guy's off his rocker now. I mean, he's absolutely crazy and he's nuts. And what a perfect venue and a perfect place for him to go than the Joe Rogan show. Because the Joe Rogan show is something where you have two people sitting across from each other and they're talking with this intellectual affect, right? Like, it's everything that they're saying is very intellectual and like, never thought of that before. Thank God the Joe Rogan show, the guy who is a failed comedian and hosted a game show where people ate worms, that people are literally sitting down and watching and going, what an intellectual conversation. This is so smart. But this is Joe Rogan and Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson is talking about these friends of his that had cancer. And boy, listen to the good news of the stories of the people that he knew had cancer. Has a very good ending.
A good story.
Okay.
I have 3 friends. All 3 of them had stage 4 cancer. All 3 of them don't have cancer right now at all.
So weird.
And they had some serious stuff going on.
And what did they take?
Jesus. They took some, what you've heard they've taken.
What is he doing? What's this whole shtick he's doing?
Ivermectin. Fenbendazole. Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot.
They just
sure you are, Joe.
something or other.
There's studies on that now where people have proven that
people are drinking methylene blue and stuff like that.
Yeah, methylene blue, which was a fabric dye.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a textile dye. And now they find it has profound effects on your mitochondria.
Yep.
Joe Rogan learned the word mitochondria a while back, and now he likes to bring it up for everything.
Yeah.
This stuff works, man.
There's a lot of stuff that does work, which is very strange because, again, it's profit. When you hear about things that are demonized and that turn out to be effective, you always wonder, well, what is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
How is our medical institutions, how have they failed us so that things that do cure you are not promoted because they're not profitable?
There is no proof that it cures you. Sure, there could be studies about these things to see if they would work in any capacity on the human body. And the fact that there are studies, he even said it himself, that studies are being done. Who are the studies being done by? They're being done by the medical societies and the medical institutions. So if they're doing these studies, then how can you make this case that they're hiding this because it's not a moneymaker? How could a cancer cure not be a moneymaker? What are you talking about? See, this is the problem with Joe Rogan and his audience that listens to him. The problem is that sometimes every once in a while, and I don't even know if this is true or not because I'm not a Joe Rogan fan. I just hear him and I hear the clips, but there's a possibility that he could be having conversations with somebody that's qualified, not Mel Gibson, but somebody that's qualified, like an actual doctor or somebody like that, that could give information that could be true or have some truth to it. The problem with the Joe Rogan show is everything's a conspiracy. Everything. The government is holding this from us. They're not telling you this. They're not telling you that. Me, Joe Rogan, the failed comedian and host of Fear Factor and who yells at UFC fights. I am the guy that's going to figure all this out for you. But when every single thing that comes out of your mouth is a conspiracy theory, at some point, doesn't somebody stop themselves and go, all right, maybe this is a little too over the top for me. Joe, I get the shtick. I'm out. I'm not listening to this garbage anymore. And it appears as he is slipping a little bit because who is it? Jason Kelsey's wife now has the #1 podcast on Spotify. I'm happy to hear that. Here's Joe and Mel Gibson talking about evolution.
Thoughts on evolution?
Wow.
I don't understand the shtick here. First of all, we know he's a far, far right religious nut. And we know he doesn't believe in evolution. And Joe knows that too. So I'm not even sure why they asked him the question other than to get this show of an answer.
The Darwin thing?
Yeah.
I don't really go for it.
No?
Yeah. Ice Age, dinosaurs, what did they turn into? I mean, things became extinct at some point. I don't think I was some kind of legless thing that crawled out of the ocean. I don't think I came from that. I think I was created.
I don't mind if you believe in creationism. That's fine with me. I mean, there's a lot of people in this country that do believe in that. And, that's perfectly fine. But like I said, I think what bothers me the most is that Joe Rogan is one of the most listened to and influential people, especially with younger men in this country. And if you see the result of what happened in this prior election, you saw more younger men went out and voted for Donald Trump than they did the last time. And when now you have somebody like Joe Rogan is fully on your side, and you also have the right-wing ecosystem, again, the right-wing propaganda ecosystem, he bleeds into that. So it's kind of like a, what do you call those? The, 1 second, let me do something here. Okay. It's like those, the drugs that you start taking that, aren't that big of a deal, but then they lead to something bigger. That's what Joe Rogan is. Joe Rogan is somebody that bleeds into these far right-wing ecosystems, and now they're all together. And that is the ecosystem that made the biggest push for Donald Trump at the end of this election. Again, had Kamala Harris maybe had 3 more months, had they been able to get out there a little bit more, I swear, I've said this before, if they don't take this opportunity now to go out and go on these shows so they can counter everything that's being said about them, make sure they show up on the shows, challenge them if they're not going to invite you on their show. Continue to challenge them every single day and say, hey, Joe Rogan, I've asked numerous times to be on your show. You seem to only want to have the people on your show that are going to agree with everything that you say. So why won't you have somebody that might want to counter what either a guest said or what either you said? Why would you not want to have that? If Joe Rogan is as brilliant as his listeners think he is, they would probably say, yeah, Joe, have him on. Let's see what happens. And let's see if Joe does have him on. But, and that doesn't just go for Joe Rogan. That goes for everybody. I've been told for a long time, Joe Rogan's really a liberal. It seemed at one point that he did have some liberal views. In fact, he was somebody big on on climate change. I don't have the clip, but there was a clip of him talking to Mel Gibson about climate change. Now, all of a sudden, he's making fun of it and that it's they tried to scare you with this climate change. So, again, that's another reason why I don't respect Joe Rogan. I don't have a problem with somebody having a view on something and then changing their mind after educating themselves about it. But to completely flip on every single thing that you've believed in, to me, that doesn't make you smart. That makes you weak. That makes you somebody that probably didn't know anything to begin with. I have had the same views for most of my life, and I don't just listen to certain people. I'll listen to anybody say anything about anything, and I go out and I do my research. And once I do my research, now I feel better about believing what I believe in after I do the research that I do. But to completely change who you are as a person completely, I don't know. I think that's a personality defect. I'll catch up on a couple of the comments here. Remember the North Carolina fire? They should have gone out and we did that one already. Baby Juggernaut is here. Hey, Baby Juggernaut, thank you for joining. Good to see you as always. I appreciate you. What about the fact that Elon is going after Germany and UK to try to help they go after the far right? Elon, his whole thing is, that's the thing now, is that he wants to turn, and that's what people like the Tucker Carlsons of the world, Steve Bannon, they want to turn the entire world into this sort of authoritarian sort of government and this whole populist movement that they want. And Elon is not only attacking just our elections, he's attacking elections all over the world. And you know why? Because he can. And see, as an American, that should bother the shit out of you, that a guy that wasn't even born here, somebody from South Africa, is controlling what's happening in our elections. Baby Juggernaut, Tesla's failing too. Tesla has gone down a lot, but I think their stock price did go up, obviously, after the election, which, certainly helped Elon Musk and his overall wealth. What about the fact that Elon is, we did that one. Mel Gibson's home in Malibu was destroyed by the Los Angeles wildfires. Was his house too? I didn't see that. I know that there was karma. Yeah. I saw that there was some celebrity houses, Billy Crystal, I believe, James Woods, and somebody else. I believe their houses were damaged as well. And again, no matter whose house was damaged out there, I don't care who you voted for. I don't care who you pray to. I don't care. I feel horrible for anybody whose life has been turned upside down by these fires that apparently have been started by other fellow human beings, which again, this is sort of the world we're living in now. We have a country of just very, very angry people. And the people who are being angered are ones, again, they are susceptible to these lies, and they're susceptible to the disinformation and misinformation that's being passed around constantly. And, at some point, as a collective group, as human beings, as Americans, we all need to get together and say enough's enough, because this is outrageous. I mean, the fact that when we had schools and children were being lit up by weapons of basically mass destruction, and we're really not doing anything about it other than saying thoughts and prayers. What? I don't understand. Somebody's got to explain to me what's going on in this country when that's where we're at. That's where we're at when we're just going to go, you know what? It is what it is. I mean, I guess it's part of life now. I hope it doesn't happen to my kid, but thoughts and prayers to everybody else's kid that it happened to. But literally nothing has been done. Nothing. And I know you cannot necessarily just stop a lunatic from going out and doing what they're going to do. But there's got to be something, at least make an attempt at something to where it either stops it before it happens, and what I'm saying is, you see somebody strange, there's a camera system, somebody strange getting out of their car and they're starting to walk towards the school. You have somebody to cut them off right away or something. I have no idea, but nothing, literally nothing like that is going on in any school that I know of. But as I was talking about combating the disinformation and the lies, Mehdi Hassan was on with Piers Morgan, who's another guy who bows down to Donald Trump because Donald Trump named him the apprentice one year on a Celebrity Apprentice. I think he won it one year. So now all of a sudden he's in love with this lifelong grifter con man. And I've said this before. I said it every week since I read it. Please get the book Lucky Loser. I'm just telling you, if you want to get a deep dive into who Donald Trump really was as a businessman, the worst businessman you will ever hear about in your entire life or read about if you read it, just please get a copy of that book and read it. You will be stunned. I already knew he was a terrible businessman. I knew it. I was shocked even more so how, horrifically bad he was as a businessman, borrowing money from daddy all the time. That's how he had money, because daddy was always helping him out and bailing him out of things. But it's way more than that. Please get that book. I implore you to get it. But anyway, Mehdi Hassan was on with Piers Morgan. And see, this is the kind of battle I want to see people on the left do with these people on the right. When they start throwing things out there and then they want to move on to a different topic, and Mehdi's like, whoa. No, now all of a sudden you want to deflect and you don't want to stick with the topic. You'll see in this exchange, it was an interesting exchange. And this is the kind of shit that I want to see the left do more. I want to see them battle more and say, stop letting, when somebody says something, let them just kind of drift on to something else without actually answering the original question you were talking about. But this is pretty good.
Do you support Donald Trump suing a pollster because he doesn't like a poll result?
I think Donald
Trump...
This
is insane, Piers. I thought you were a free
can
speech
sue
champion,
who he likes.
but now you're rolling over for Trump as well.
Donald Trump can sue who he likes.
Do you support it, is my question. Do you support a president of the United States suing media organizations he doesn't like?
Do you
support that, do you? Free speech champion Piers Morgan.
Do you believe he has a right to?
So you're rolling over like Mark Zuckerberg?
This is, by the way, it's a tactic I like. It is going after their manhood, because these dudes think they are the manly ones. I assure you, these guys are not manly. First of all, anybody that just agrees with every single word Donald Trump says, you are not manly. You are not a tough guy. You are not the tough guy in the room here. Mehdi's the tough guy because he's not going to let you get away with it, and he's going to call out your manhood too because of it.
Do you believe he has a right to sue people?
For Donald Trump.
Does he have a right to sue people?
Of course he has a right to, but is he right to?
Okay, then we're agreed.
Is he right to?
Then we're agreed.
Dodging.
Then we're agreed.
No, it doesn't. No, we're not agreed. Do you support his lawsuit? Yes or no?
See, he's not letting him go. He's just going to, and first of all, he's deflecting by saying, does he not have a right? Of course he has a right, but that's Piers Morgan because he doesn't know what else to say. He doesn't know how to defend himself. So he's trying to find some words to get out of this, and he's going to try to get out of it, and he's not going to let him.
Doesn't matter.
Wrong. It's a very simple question.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, you're too scared to answer. Got it.
No, Donald Trump sues people all the time.
Do you think he's right to sue the pollster? And do you agree with it? You have strong views, Piers, but you're not telling me today.
Let's get to your strong. Let's get
I guess
to your.
You're like Mark Zuckerberg.
Let's get to your
Trump.
strong views, Mehdi.
Oh yeah, let's change the subject.
No,
so I don't have
think
to
you've
answer
forgotten
the
whose
question.
show
It's a simple
it is.
question. Do you support Donald Trump's lawsuit?
It's not your show.
Do you support Donald Trump's lawsuit?
It's not your
against
show.
The pollster?
I'm asking you the questions.
All right. Well, everyone can see that you don't want to answer the question.
They can. They can see that I want to ask you questions, not have you pepper me with questions.
Yeah, of course, because when you're forced to answer your bullshit, your lies, or your defense of somebody all the time, but when somebody else does something, you're going to attack it. But when you call out Donald Trump or something, you're not going to answer the question. Bullshit. That's what Mehdi Hassan says. Nope, you're going to answer this fucking question. And if you're not going to answer a question, you're going to be exposed to your entire audience, because I pointed this out last time. That's what these guys on the right do. They all get together and they have conversations with each other, and they go on their ecosystem and they talk out to the people who want to listen to them, and they talk to each other. They will never, ever have somebody on their show that will counter what they have to say. You'll see it every once in a while, but for the most part, you think Jesse Waters has the ability and the capabilities to argue with somebody about political points? Jesse Waters is a moron. Jesse Waters is an idiot. He said it himself, in fact. He says that he wouldn't even go on other shows because he'd be exposed. He said something to that effect. You could look that up. He did. But Tucker Carlson got destroyed by Jon Stewart when they were doing Crossfire with Paul Begala back when he was on CNN. And a lot of people don't know that, by the way. Did you know Tucker Carlson used to be on CNN? He did. And Jon Stewart went on his show and absolutely destroyed them so badly that they wound up canceling Crossfire because basically of that appearance. And if you've never seen Jon Stewart on Crossfire with Tucker Carlson and Paul Begala, turn this show off now and go watch it. It is genius. It is brilliant. Jon Stewart was awesome on that show. And it was also, this was years and years ago. This was, again, the sort of battle that I want to see out of people from the left, where they know they are smarter than you because they know you're lying. They know you're full of shit. And at some point, you know you're not going to be able to defend your shit. So what do? You deflect to something else, just like Piers Morgan was trying to do. But when you're smarter and you're more prepared, that's the way you defeat this. You have to get in front of this. You have to be in front of these people at all times and make sure you deflect the nonsense and the bullshit that's being spewed about you constantly, because literally people voted on the fact that they thought Kamala Harris cared more about transgender people getting surgeries in prison than she cared about the price of eggs. They thought that she was the border czar and that she was put in charge of stopping illegal immigrants from coming into the country, and she wasn't able to do her job. None of that is true, by the way. She was never the border czar. That Joe Biden has an open borders policy. There's no such thing as an open borders policy. Find it for me if you can find me the policy. The open borders policy. Find it anywhere. I don't even give a shit what website it comes from. Just find me the open borders policy of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris that everybody went around and said exists. It doesn't exist. I can just tell you, you're wasting your time looking for it. But find it for me. Send it to me. You can email me at runshousepodcast@gmail.com. Find me the open border policy that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have. Doesn't exist. In fact, border crossings are down. Border crossings are down now as much as they were when Trump was in office. And in fact, in some parts of Trump's administration, they're lower. So open border policy never existed. It doesn't exist now. It doesn't exist then. But the problem is not enough people were on these shows deflecting this and debating this with people. First of all, it's not a debate. A debate is, let's say right now, the Steelers and Ravens are playing. Before the game, if you were a Ravens fan and I was a Steelers fan, and we had a debate on who was going to win, we could debate that based on, the Steelers defense and how well they played and how good Lamar Jackson is. If you were debating for the Ravens, that's an actual debate. But if you're debating that that the Ravens get to play with 18 people against the Steelers 7 people in this game tonight, and you're debating this as fact, and you have people out there spewing that and saying that that's true, that's no longer a debate. That's just you lying completely because you know your audience and you know who's going to buy into it and believe it. And that's all you care about. You care about them believing that whether the Ravens win or the Ravens lose, the reason why they were able to win that game was because they were able to have 18 players on the field while the Steelers were only allowed to have 7 players on the field. That's not a debate anymore. That's just you playing to an audience so you could score points and later on get people to agree with you. But in this sense, in the political sense, now get people to vote for you. So that's literally what happened. But also, too, Scott Galloway, he teaches brand management and digital marketing to second-year MBA students at NYU Stern School of Business. He also has a podcast, the Professor G podcast. I don't know if you heard it, with Kara Swisher as his co-host. He's written books. You might know him if you saw him. He's really good. I like him a lot. He was on with Anderson Cooper, and he was giving his sort of 2 cents about the tech bros and Elon Musk and how now we are a kleptocracy. And he had a lot of interesting things to say. So take a listen to this.
These tech billionaires are kind of following or trying to play catch up, I guess, with Elon Musk and making inroads with the new administration.
And the best trade of 2024 was Elon Musk put $250 million into the Trump campaign. And since then, the value of his companies and his stake in those companies is up by about $140 billion. So that's about a 5,600% return.
And that's not any change in in Tesla, in the output or anything.
Nothing to do with the company.
Right.
Nothing to do with their operating margins, their innovation, their sales. It's based on a general assumption that America has become a full kleptocracy like Russia, that the largest, deepest pocketed customer in the history of our modern economy, the US government, will effectively is now pay to play and will shuffle contracts, monies, and impose regulatory punishment on the competitors to the companies who do not invest in the Republican Party or in his inaugural campaign, as evidenced by the fact that very few of these tech executives invested in the inaugural campaign fund for Biden, and they are all doing it for Trump. We have gone full kleptocrat. And if you don't think this hurts everyone, this raises prices, and for the little guy or the companies that don't want to engage in this type of pay for play, it hurts them. This will increase prices and weaken our democracy. This is absolutely 100%. No different than how Putin became the wealthiest man in the world.
Do you think this is a long-term change in the political direction of these tech companies, or would they shift course when the president-elect leaves office?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's 2 things going on here. This is good for shareholder value for Meta to not have to live up to the standards of traditional media companies. News Corp decided to circulate misinformation around Dominion voting machines, despite the fact they knew that was false information. They were sued because it resulted.
He's obviously talking about Fox News here.
Did an economic harm against Dominion, and they were punished to the tune of about $750 million. What happened at News Corp on Fox was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud of what took place on Meta, yet Meta is immune. So what you have is these companies that are circulating, or kind of a misinformation Lollapalooza, quite frankly, are just running away with it in terms of profitability, in terms of shareholder value. So they're totally driven by shareholder value. They're doing their job. We're not doing our job in terms of electing representatives who have the backbone to stand up to attempts to weaponize the government and still believe in a democratic America where there's competition, where misinformation, where a lack of truth, a lack of trust in our institutions remain pillars of our society. That seems to be eroding, but they will go where the puck goes, and that is whatever increases the value of their shares.
Scott Galloway.
Yeah, and that, to me, again, that's the scariest thing in the world, is that money has taken over everything. And it now has taken over not just our sports, not just our politics, not just that. It is now taking over our democracy. It has taken over something that, if we don't wake up, which I'm afraid that we're not going to, that this could be the way of life for a very long time. And it's not the way of life I think that a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump thinks is going to be the best for them. They're going to find out the hard way. Again, I made the analogy before that, this is kind of like we're in a very tall building and I'm looking out the window and I see an airplane coming towards us, and MAGA is in the break room and they don't see it coming. I see it coming. They don't. They're in there laughing it up and eating lunch and everything's going to be fine. They have no idea what's getting ready to hit. And, and unfortunately, it's going to affect all of us that's in the building. It doesn't matter whether you're MAGA or you're somebody that voted for Kamala Harris. None of that matters. But it's going to matter to all of us at some point. And the fact, again, that the richest person in the world who wasn't even born in this country, we are just letting him walk in and take over this whole thing. And you are out of your mind if you don't think that Elon Musk is not going to have a say in what happens in this government. Now, we all know the couple things that could happen here. One, Elon has all the money. Donald Trump doesn't have the money. Elon's got it all. And even if Donald had the money, he wouldn't want to spend it on himself anyway, or he wouldn't want to spend it on politics. He wouldn't want to spend it on other candidates in 2026 when we have the midterms. He knows that Elon has all the money and he will spend all the money to make sure all these candidates, or at least do his best to make sure that these candidates win every single election in the midterms with this money. So Donald, in a way, has to keep him around. However, Donald's ego is way bigger than his maybe care for who wins the 2026 midterms. Because at some point, Donald may think to himself, okay, let's say I lose the 2026 midterms. Who gives a shit? This is my last 4 years anyway. I only did this to stay out of prison. That's the only reason why I wanted to win the presidency, to make sure I didn't go to prison, because I 100% was going to prison if I did not win this election. So he might think to himself, you know what? This guy's getting more on my nerves than I thought. I don't need his money. And then the war starts. So then the war between Donald Trump and Elon Musk starts, the big egos that starts. And then which way does that go? What happens at that point? The very good possibility is Elon could completely flip on Donald Trump and then turn Twitter into an anti-Trump site. And then now start going on the Joe Rogan podcast and maybe paying Joe Rogan to start saying positive things about the Democrats or negative things about Donald Trump. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that Joe Rogan was paid to basically, because he was already sort of on that boat. He was already on that boat of being in the right-wing ecosystem, propaganda ecosystem, and he's a conspiracy theory nut. And that fits right in with that whole side. But again, the Democrats need to keep this up. I've said it, and I heard them. They continue to say it a little bit here and there, but they need to amplify calling Elon Musk president. They need to call him President Musk and keep doing it over and over again, because Donald Trump's so simple. He's a very simple, easily manipulated man. The guy who can easily manipulate a lot of very uneducated people is very easily manipulated himself. All you have to do is say, I love you, Donald. You're the greatest. Or you have to propose a threat to Donald Trump in the manner of which somebody is going to take over your job, or somebody's going to make more money than you, or somebody's going to do this, that. If you give him the idea that Elon Musk is running the show, that he is potentially going to take over, not necessarily as president, but he's going to have more power than you, that'll drive him insane. It'll drive him batshit crazy insane. And that's where the war starts. That's where he starts to say, in fact, there's already reports that Elon's overstayed his welcome and that he's getting annoyed. Donald Trump's getting annoyed by Elon Musk. So if it's already starting and we're not even in office yet, it's coming. It's going to happen. And, we'll see what happens when that explosion comes to fruition, because when it does, it's going to be very, very interesting to see. But anyway, all right. I think that's wrapping up the show. Nope, I got one more clip. Holy shit. How can I leave this clip out? This is our very fine president, Joe Biden, who will be gone in 10 days. And I'll tell you what, whether you're watching me on here, whether you're watching me on TikTok or wherever else you're watching me, I will battle anybody about the presidency of Joe Biden. I hear a lot of people saying, I've never even heard of a Joe Biden supporter, or I've heard of people who voted for him, but I don't know anybody that supports him. I support him, and I will go to battle with anybody about how great Joe Biden was, still is, as a president. Does he have flaws? He has flaws, just like every single president before us, every single one. But Joe Biden is one of the best presidents of my lifetime. I will say that with confidence. I will say it in your face. I'll say it behind your back. I'll say it to the left, to the right, over here, over there. I don't give a shit. Joe Biden was a great president, and the way he steered us through the disaster that was left to him. And I'm not even going to say by Donald Trump. I'm going to say it was left to him by the pandemic, because nobody was going to be able to stop the economic disaster that happened due to the pandemic. So I'm not even blaming Trump for that. But he was left with an economic disaster. And the way he steered us through it and got to the place where we are right now economically. And if you don't understand economics, then maybe do yourself a favor and study it a little bit and understand what Joe Biden did from the time he took office to where we are now economically. I say this every week, the number one economy in the world. It's not even close post-pandemic. And he steered us through that better than anybody. In fact, steered us through it without having a recession, a real recession. We never had a recession, which is remarkable. But anyway, our fantastic, unbelievably great president, Joe Biden, was asked recently, does he regret dropping out of the race? And this is what he had to say.
Mr. President, do you regret your decision to run for re-election? Do you think that that made it easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump and would have beaten Trump. It wasn't about, I thought it was important to unify the party. And when the party was worried about whether or not I was going to be able to move, I thought it was, even though I thought I could win again, I thought it was better to unify the party. And it was the greatest honor in my life to be President of the United States, but I didn't want to be one who caused a party that wasn't unified to lose an election. And that's why I stepped aside, but I was confident she could win.
Yeah, we did a disservice by this man. We really did. And I don't care how old he is. I don't care how much he stumbles over his words. There's absolutely no question in my mind that Joe Biden is 10,000 times better the president than this clown show that's getting ready to hit our country in 10 days. There's absolutely no question in my mind. If you want to come back in 4 years and Donald Trump just did this unbelievable thing that I never expected, we'll talk about it. In fact, I'll give you 2 years, maybe 1 year. Let's see, because according to all the MAGAs, he's got a magic wand that no other president in the history of this country has ever had. But this clown who couldn't even handle his own businesses properly is going to handle the United States of America's issues properly. Okay, we'll see how that works out for everybody. So if anybody out there who's a big time MAGA who is 100% convinced that everything that he said is going to happen, which is going to be lower gas prices, lower interest rates. And when I say lower interest rates are naturally going to lower at some point anyway, but these sub 3%, because that's what people told me, Donald Trump had our interest rates at under 3%. That's why I voted for him. He had our gas at under $2 a gallon. I had way more money in the bank when Donald Trump was president. So all these things that he said that he's going to do, if you don't mind, send me the date in which you feel comfortable when all this stuff is going to happen. Actually, not all this stuff. I'll give you just 3 things. You pick any 3 that you want that are going to happen that you voted on. And let's see how that works out for you in your life and how it made your life better. I'm happy to look at it, and we'll look at it together, and maybe you could get me to go, because I will say it. I'll say, God damn shit, I was wrong. You know, he was dead on about now our gas prices are $1.50 and interest rates, sure enough, sure as shit, is under 3%. You know, I have a bad feeling, I can tell you this, as somebody in the mortgage business, if Jesus, the Ravens are kicking the shit out of the Steelers. As somebody in the mortgage business, if they're under 3%, I'll be doing really, really well. However, I think that if the mortgage rates drop to under 3% under Donald Trump, that they are somehow going to be artificially done, and that's going to wind up destroying the country again at some point later on. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Joe Biden is a fantastic president. We did a disservice by him. If he still stayed in the race, I don't care what anybody says, he still would have won. Maybe he wouldn't. I know things were not looking good, but the only thing that really destroyed Joe Biden was his age. It was his age, and he sounded old, and he lost many steps, but that still doesn't mean that he was not in tune on what was going on. He is very good. He understands everything that is happening, and he did a great job, again, steering us through post-pandemic. Did he do everything perfect? No, but there's not a president that has done everything perfect. But Joe Biden, I will say, is the best president that we have had in our lifetime as far as accomplishments are concerned. And I will stick through that, and I will argue that with anybody. But anyway, anybody that watched, well, I know 2 people at least. I see we have some people watching either on Twitter and some on YouTube. And but of course, Angel, Baby Juggernaut, thank you for always joining. I really appreciate you guys coming in and commenting and being part of the show. As you know, we will be back on Tuesday night live at 8 o'clock. If you can, if you're watching this on Twitter and you did like the content at all, can you go to YouTube and please subscribe to us there, please? You can find it Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. And please subscribe to the show. Please hit the like button, all that stuff. And you can also join Lana. She has her own show, The Quest Show. She's on live usually on Thursday nights, so you can join her as well. Oh, by the way, I said 8 o'clock. Our new time on Tuesday night is 7 o'clock. So we're going to be on 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights. Baby Juggernaut, Angel, I hope you guys heard that, that we will be on at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights. And then I'll pop on somewhere during the week. I don't even know when. Sometimes it's just when I feel like it. So anyway, anybody that joined here on TikTok, thank you guys for watching. And we will see everybody on Tuesday. Have a great rest of your week.